G'day guys, it is Dan here from Unsealed 4x4 and you're probably wondering why I've invited you to my workshop. Well, today we're going to be talking about this. This is the REVO MKII recovery winch from Bushranger 4x4. Now, if you're not familiar with Bushranger 4x4, they're an Aussie company, been around since '77 as Kingsley Enterprises, and they make some really good quality gear. All of it's Australian designed and engineered, so I'm expecting some pretty good things from this. Now, the reason that I'm actually going to do an unboxing video for this is it sits in a pretty unique position in the market. It's around the $1,300 mark, which puts it obviously considerably more than some of the, how do I put it, budget offerings on the market. You know the type of winches I'm talking about. But it also puts it below Bushranger's more premium, high-end is probably a better term, covert winch. So what do we actually get out of this is what I want to know. If you spend more than the budget offerings, but you're not quite digging as deep as like the real premium things, do you get a decent winch? Should you go one way or the other, or is this going to be the sweet spot? That's what we're here to find out today. Now, it is available in a couple of different options. Obviously, there is the typical 10 and 12,000 pound. I've gone for the 12,000 pound because it's going to be going in my 80 series. And there is the old steel cable or the more common synthetic. Again, I've gone for the synthetic. I just find it's a little bit safer. I do appreciate some people do prefer the cable though, so it is good to see that there are a couple of different options there. Now, before we get stuck into it, as you can see, it's still got the straps on. I literally have no idea what's in here. It just turned up today. I do want to point out that it is really good to see that the packaging is actually pretty decent quality. It's got all the specs on the back, all the weights, measurements, all that kind of stuff. I personally find that things like that just show that the company actually cares about the details. You know, if they're putting the effort into making sure that it's got decent quality packaging, they're probably putting the effort in to make sure that it's got good grease, good bearings, you know, good electrical contacts, all that kind of thing. So let's get stuck into it. Let's see where we land. Okay, so I opened it up. Probably can't see in here too well, but it is loaded up with gear. I can't even actually see the winch at the moment. That means we're probably gonna have a few things to talk about along the way. It's the old instruction manual. Everyone reads them. Yep, right. Definitely gonna come back to that. It does have all of the cabling, which is pretty fantastic to see. Actually, it looks like we're getting stuck into the solenoid box straight away. Let's cut this one open. Okay, so a couple of things to know about this particular solenoid box. The Covert, the next model up, it's got an integrated one. The REVO is kind of halfway between. So if you're familiar with the older winches or especially some of the cheaper offerings, you know, they've got this huge bulky control box that never fits anywhere. They're an absolute disaster. In a modern four-wheel drive, they're getting in the way of parking sensors and radar and all that kind of thing. This one is actually a slimline one. Control, we'll come back to that. Yeah, wow. Get a look at that. You can see how slim this actually is. Obviously, it's still a control box, but you know, compared to the big bulky ones of yesteryear, this is actually quite neat. It does come with a wireless controller, and there is a cable for a wired one as well. Looks of things that there's plenty of cable on here, so we can remote mount that, which is going to be good. You know what? Hold that thought for half a second. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. Now, if you come right in close, you can see this is actually an Albright solenoid. If you're not familiar with Albright, they are basically the bee's knees when it comes to solenoids. They are pretty much the go-to upgrade for anyone looking to build a custom winch. I built a very expensive winch years ago, and that is the exact solenoid that it was running. Looks like the wireless control module is in here as well, and you can see that's all sealed up as well. I believe this is rated IP67, so it should hold up fairly well for, you know, pretty much any kind of four-wheel driving situations you're going to be in. You know, your salt water, your river crossings, that kind of thing. A lot of the old cheaper solenoids used to have to run a seal on this because the solenoids were just garbage. This is actually a brilliant one, so I'm actually quite keen to see how that Albright solenoid goes. I spent a lot of money on my last one, so really cool seeing one integrated right in here. All right, let's pop that to the side for a sec. Obviously got our negative cable, that one's gonna come from the battery. This here is gonna be our positive and our cables to the actual winch motor itself. What do we got here? Okay, wow, that is fantastic. This actually looks like a really high-end cable. To be honest, when I was planning out what I was gonna say here, talking about the quality of the cable is not something I thought would be happening, but that is actually really, really good. Like I said before, I don't actually care about the cable, but I care about the fact that the company has put the effort in like this, so it makes me trust that the internal parts, the parts I can't see, are gonna be up to the task. Now that's gonna run from the battery to what I assume is gonna be an isolator somewhere. Let's open it up and find out what's inside. Okay, here we go. This looks like a mounting kit. It's interesting, so there's a bunch of different bolts in here. Some are button head, some are your normal hex head. So I'm assuming they're gonna be for the actual mount itself and for the fair lead. It's got all your typical washers and your spring washers as well. Everything looks, what do we got? 10.9 bolts. They are definitely gonna last the distance. Little lanyard that'll go on what I assume is gonna be a winch hook in here. Slide this to the side for a second. This is what I was looking for. Okay. This here is a winch isolator. And from what I can see, this is actually, unsurprisingly, a very nice one. So the whole purpose of these, if you're not super across them, this is gonna mount in the engine bay somewhere. This physically disconnects the cable from the battery to the winch. A lot of people wire them directly, but don't do that. It nearly cost me a four-wheel drive once. I had it wired direct straight to the solenoid. It shorted out and it actually set fire to my poor old Toyota. So this is fantastic to see. I like it's got this key on it with a little lanyard. You can pull that out, so you know, if you're driving in salt water, you can remove that completely. You know your winch is gonna be fully isolated. I have had another one short out, again, different four-wheel drive, and pretty much turn the bull bar into a pretzel. So physically being able to remove that is absolutely brilliant. It's good to see it comes with the mounting bracket for it as well, all the fixings. Again, everything in there looks good quality. We've got spring washers, and nylock lock nuts. Fantastic. Got to figure out where I'm going to mount that now. What do we got here? Oof. We have the winch hook. That is an absolute monster. Looks like we've got the pins for it. Looks like a pretty standard bit of kit. What do we got? Bushranger 4x4 gear. Oh, that's good. It's actually branded. It's not an off-the-shelf one. It's got that positive latch, so it's not going to fall off. Once you put it on, it's staying on. It is actually interesting seeing that that gateway is another forged piece as well. A lot of them run just a simple little sheet metal tab, and it is fine for stopping it from falling out, but they can bend and twist and they end up in the bins. So that looks like a solid bit of kit, solid pin, a couple of little locking tabs. That'll go good. Last piece in box one, the horse fair lead. Horse? I think I'm pronouncing that right. All right, that, again, unsurprisingly. Oh, actually, that's quite interesting. Solid bit of kit, black powder coat, looks beautiful. Looks like a brilliant piece of machined billet aluminium. It is actually interesting though, you'll notice that it's got the branding on both sides, and it's because the holes are actually offset. So if you run it this side, the mounting hole is down low. If you spin it around, the mounting hole is up high. That's gonna help you get it aligned on the bull bar. That's nice actually. I've had them before where you've physically had to run it upside down to get it to line up. So it's really cool to see Bushranger think of that. It's got me excited to see the actual winch, but before we do that, let's have a look at this controller. It is the last packet. I'm keen to get a bit of a look at it. All right, that's nice and sturdy. You can see, obviously, it's got that connection, so this is gonna function as your wireless or your wired controller. It's pretty simple, in and out affair. It does have, that makes sense now, it does have a lanyard that can go on it. All right, here is what we've all, and by all I mean me, have been waiting for. Let's get a look at the actual winch itself. All right. So there are a couple of things that stand out to me already, and they make me pretty bloody happy, I'm gonna be honest. The fit and finish of this is just, it's fantastic. You know, it's got this nice black powder coat. Obviously it's got mounting spots up here if you do have room to fit this winch control box directly on top. It can be remote mounted as well. I'm loving all of the casings and castings around everything. Just, you know, the little details like this clutch handle. Wow, that's really nice actually. The way I've got the winch at the moment is actually on its side. So in a normal bull bar, it's typically gonna run in like that with these bolts to the front. That's gonna put this clutch handle nice and easy to access. That's beautiful. That's probably one of the nicest ones I've ever actually seen. Again, the handle's not that big a deal. They can be a little bit cumbersome, but Bushranger reckon that you can power this out quite easily, so you don't need to be able to reach it, but it is good that, you know, if you do need to, it's quite simple to operate. I'll pop it back down. So around on the side, you can see all the mounting points for this. Now that tells me that this gearbox, while it's in this orientation right now from the factory, it can be clocked. You can roll this handle pretty much wherever you need it. So if you're running something weird and wonderful like a Jeep, which typically mount like this, you can roll it right back, or maybe you've got a custom bar, you can kick it towards the rear. It's a really nice little feature, and it's something that just sort of goes into that, you know, Aussie design and engineered ethos that Bushranger are going for, that, you know, they actually understand four-wheel driving because they're here, they're not just a manufacturer, they are actually four-wheel drivers. I do like seeing these absolutely sturdy top rails as well. If you've been around four-wheel driving for a while, you'd remember the tiny little rods. They'd always twist, you get misalignment between the motor and the gearbox. These things absolutely aren't going anywhere. They are absolutely solid as a rock, and that's gonna keep everything aligned. One important thing to note, that while both the gearbox and the motor can be clocked, they are fully sealed. They're both IP68 rated. That means you're not going to have any issues at all with dust or water ingress. You can take this up, give it a road, and it's just going to keep on kicking. It's really fantastic to see. As this is 12,000 pound, it's got Big Daddy motor too. This is a 6.2 horsepower series wound motor. Pretty excited to see that. It's not only going to draw less power than some of the older, simpler winches on the market, we're going to get significantly faster line speeds. So it's not just all in the numbers, you know, sometimes it's in the specs as well. So I'm expecting good things out of that. It is a solid little number too. Bushranger lists this at 33.9 kilos fitted. That fitted part is the real sort of key here. A lot of manufacturers will strip them right down. You know, they'll be taking nuts and bolts and everything off to try and make it look like their winch is a lot lighter than it actually is. And that can give you all sorts of grief if you're speccing your suspension out. If your winch ends up significantly heavier than what the box says, your front suspension is really going to struggle with that weight. So 33.9 kilos fitted, that's going to include the winch, the fair lead, all the mounting bolts, the control box, everything. So it's definitely not the lightest winch on the market, but it's an honest weight, it's a reasonable weight. Considering the engineering that's gone into just making this an actual tank of a unit, I think it's quite a reasonable weight as well. You know, 33.9 kilos isn't ridiculous in the slightest. Another feature that I really like is the internal brake in this is actually over in the gearbox. Back in the day, a lot of them used to be inside the drum and they would heat up, they'd fail. It was an absolute disaster. So it's good to see that it's over here in the actual gearbox as well. It should stay away from all the heat of the motor. It's a 4-stage gearbox, 4-stage planetary gearbox. It's hardened steel teeth, so that should be super reliable. Again, fully sealed, so once it's greased, it should stay greased. And it is advertised as zero drag, so When we engage that clutch, we should just be able to free spool this out. But again, there's no issues powering it out if you don't want to reach into your bull bar to access that part. I think the details of this winch really make it more than the sum of its parts. You know, everything on it is just good quality. The touch points are fantastic. You know, the fit and finish is fantastic. The bracing's good. Again, Aussie designed and engineered. They get it. It just gives you confidence. You know that it doesn't have the cheapest bearings in it. You know that the gearbox actually has grease in it. Not throwing shade at anyone. This one has grease. Not all of them do. And even, I just keep coming back, it's got a little Australian engineered and proven here next to it, powered by Albright. That just absolutely blows me away. Albright a few years ago was, high-end aftermarket parts. It's stuff that only people in the know knew what it was, and now you're getting it on Bushranger's mid-tier winch. It's pretty phenomenal. Well, there you have it. That's a pretty basic rundown of what's in the box. Obviously, we haven't put this to the test yet, but it is going to be going in my 80, and we're going to be doing some pretty tricky stuff with it. But so far from what I've seen, I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty impressed. I've had $300 winches. They've worked, except for tried to burn my four-wheel drive down. I've had $3,000 winches. They were fantastic. If I got stuck, it'd get me out of trouble. But from what I can see so far, this is that pretty typical, you're getting more than what you pay for. This is mid-tier prices, and it looks like a pretty solid premium winch. The specs are all fantastic. The fit and finish of it is fantastic. All the little details like the brass fittings, the zero drag clutch, every touch point you go to is fantastic. From the fair leads in the control box to the actual winch itself, everything seems really, really decent. You can see that reflected in the warranty too, lifetime mechanical and a 7-year electrical. That's pretty impressive. Now, of course, I can only talk about what I can actually see, not what it actually performs like. So I am absolutely champing at the bit to get this fitted up in the 80, get it out in the field and put it through its paces. But between you and I, I'm expecting some pretty good things.